I call the Honourable Member Jan Logie. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. And I join my colleagues to rise and speak to Women's Suffrage Day and the status of women in our country at the moment. 119 years on from achieving universal suffrage in this country. Just a quick note, I'm surprised that none of the men have spoken on the benefits of having our voices in Parliament on this debate. Yeah, thank you, Grant. So now I join my Labour colleagues very strangely on wondering what Kate Shepherd and Miri Mangakahia would be thinking of our democracy and our society today. And I don't need to have a séance to know that they'd be expecting more from this country and more from this government, because I expect more. And I don't think I'm even as radical as they were back in their day, because they were some pretty fierce women. And they were obviously fans of democracy and women's involvement in decision-making. And to quote Kate Shepherd, one of her goals was that all that separates, whether of race, class, creed or sex, is inhuman and must be overcome. And in particular, she was concerned about establishing legal and economic independence of women from men. She was not wholly occupied with advancing women's rights, however, but also found time to promote political reforms such as proportional representation and that wider movement for democracy. Miri requested not only that Māori women be given the vote back at that time, but that they be eligible to sit in the Māori Parliament, thus going a step further even than her Pākehā contemporaries of the European suffrage movement. And while I don't believe it's my place to comment on the processes of tino rangatiratanga, I would like to point out that who the Crown chooses to consult with and how they consult makes a difference. And I really doubt that Miri Mangakahia would approve of the proposed process of consultation around asset sales. This isn't consultation, it's tokenism. And that's not too dissimilar from the reality of the time when she was speaking out, when women could speak, but they couldn't be heard. I also think that she'd be pretty angry that over 120 years after she spoke out to affirm Māori women's leadership, that Māori women's leadership has been eroded by systematic issues such as violence and gendered poverty. Now, to speak more to Kate's issues, I'd note again with my colleague Leanne Dalziel that Kate was a proud Cantabrian and a fighter for wider democracy. And so today, to see that loss of democracy in her place of birth and her site of struggle is a particularly sad thing and not a reason for celebration. As we see the closure of schools and mergers that threaten to take away the heart of so many communities, we know what she would be saying. When we see the City Council being taken over by their powers taken over by their unelected government body of Sarah, with no plan in sight for how this power will be returned, we know she would not be happy. We may not all have always agreed with the council in Christchurch, but to rebuild Christchurch without democracy threatens to rebuild structures but not community. And Kate would not approve. And today I went to the suffrage breakfast and heard the minister speaking around the status of women. And she noted that New Zealand continues to be well regarded internationally for our gender equality. Well, that may be true, except for, the 50+ points that the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women's Committee suggested that our state needed to work on. The Minister did acknowledge that we still need to work towards greater economic independence, improved safety from violence and increased representation in all levels and types of leadership for our women, but thinks the government is committed to doing its part to make this a reality.
I call the honourable member Simon